Simchat Torah. So today I'm going to be talking about the shoresh that has to do with the word Torah, and that shoresh is Yod Resh Yod. Welcome back to Hebrew Vocab Boost. I'm Sapir, and today I'm going to be talking about the shoresh Yod Resh Yod in honor of Simchat Torah. Now, you might think there's no Yod anywhere in the word Torah, so how is that the shoresh? Well, Yod is a letter that really has a tendency to drop out or change in a lot of different forms, and so both of these yods drop out in the word Torah, and we get a taf prefix and then a hey suffix, and that's how we get Torah out of Yod Resh Yod. I do want to mention that there will be some institutions that claim that this shoresh is Yod Resh Hey, and that's okay, but I follow the academia, and the academia says it's Yod Resh Yod. So before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about what Torah is and what this holiday is about. And so first of all, I think the most common usage, except maybe in Orthodox circles, the most common definition of the word Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. So Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. Of course, in Hebrew we have different names for these 5 books. But these 5 books, of course, we often also refer to them as the 5 books of Moses. Orthodox people often refer to it as the Chumash because it's related to the word chamesh, which means 5. So these 5 books, of course, they're the first part of the Tanakh, and so we often do have it in book form. We read through the Torah every year in synagogue, and when we do that, we're not reading out of a little book. We are reading from an actual Torah scroll, and in Hebrew we call that Sefer Torah. So it means a book of the Torah, but it's actually, a scroll. And and it's this big, really huge scroll that it doesn't use regular paper. I believe it's like lambskin. It's some kind of animal skin that we use to make the paper, and it's handwritten by a scribe. I've heard that as they're writing every word, they're also pronouncing it just so that they don't make a mistake. And these Torah scrolls, they have to be perfect. Sometimes they get damaged, and they can sometimes be repaired, or sometimes they just have to be retired. But it's a scroll, so it's got 2, for lack of a better word, 2 dowels, and then the scroll is the paper is just scrolled up on it, and as we're reading, of course, we scroll to the next section. And so you can imagine that at the very beginning of the reading, you're at the very beginning of the scroll. So your dowel on the right side, it has nothing scrolled around it, right? Because you're at the very beginning. And the dowel on the left side is completely full of all of this rolled up paper. And then as you go through the year, by the end of the year, all of the paper is scrolled along the right dowel, and it's the left dowel that's now empty. And so now you have to get back to the beginning. And so that's what this holiday is all about. We're unfortunately, I've never actually been in synagogue. I've never actually seen this done or been a part of any celebration. It's something that I really, really want to do. I've heard, especially in cities with really big Jewish populations, that the communities, they go out, they're carrying the Torah scrolls throughout the streets and singing Torah, 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 and they're just having a good old time. And I would love to be a part of that one day. But basically, we have to, re-scroll the Torah so that we're back at the beginning again, so that we can start again. Anyway, so one thing that I did mention, which I forgot to keep going with this, is that one meaning of the word Torah is the first 5 books of the Tanakh. But another meaning, and this is a meaning that is really I think the prominent meaning in Orthodox circles, is basically just all the teaching that has been passed down from time immemorial, through the rabbis, through the prophets, through everybody, all the stuff that we think we are supposed to do as to be good Jews. And so this is much bigger than the 5 books, and it's even much bigger than the Tanakh, because the Tanakh has, all of the books that Christians usually refer to as the Old Testament, but we have all of these oral traditions that were passed down orally throughout the ages. And so these are traditions that Orthodox Jews, really follow to the letter of it. All of these teachings, all of these instructions on how we're supposed to live our lives, Orthodox Jews take this very, very, very seriously, and never really go against it knowingly. They never knowingly break a rule, and if they do, they're very, very penitent about it. Whereas conservative and Reform Jews were a lot more relaxed about it, about all of these rules. And in fact, a lot of super secular Jews are not really even aware of all of these oral traditions and the fact that there even is an oral Torah. I learned it. I didn't learn it when I was a kid. I learned this in my 20s when I was rediscovering my Jewish roots and trying to learn as much as I could, because my parents are extremely secular, and so there's no asking them about anything. All right, so that's what Torah is, and that's why we have a holiday right now, Simchat Torah. It's all about simcha. This is a smichut, Simchat Torah. It's a smichut construction. It means the joy of the Torah. All right, that was a long introduction, but let's get into our words. So the main meaning of this root is kind of hard to grasp. It's we have a lot of teaching related words and then a lot of shooting related words, and so it's sometimes a little difficult to figure out how they're related. And if you've watched other videos of mine, you know that sometimes I don't ever figure out the relationship, and sometimes there isn't one. Sometimes linguistic coincidences happen all the time in every language. What really seems to be the underlying idea between all of these words is sending something in a direction intentionally, sending something on a path or in a direction. And so we'll see in a few minutes a more basic meaning, but right now I just want to talk about the word Torah, because it is by far the most common word of this shoresh in the Tanakh, and its most common translations into English are either the teaching or instruction. And it also occasionally is translated as ritual or law or rule. But teaching and instruction are really the most common translations. And very often, interestingly, in the JPS translation, the word teaching is often capitalized. And when we capitalize a word, now Hebrew doesn't have capital and lowercase letters. And so when a word gets capitalized in English, that usually means it's either a proper name, which like Moses or Abraham. And of course, that's not the case here. Or whenever we have a pronoun or some kind of a word referring to Hashem, we usually capitalize that also. And so I believe every time the word teaching is capitalized, it's because it is specifically about Hashem's teaching. And so this was the meaning that, of it in, actually when it was written in the Tanakh. And if you think about what I said about the Orthodox Jews and what they think of the word Torah, what it means to them, it really is still in a modern time very much like the instruction from Hashem, how he wants us to live our lives as passed down through all of the prophets and sages and rabbis that came before us. But we also often use the word Torah to refer to the scroll itself or to just refer to the content in those 5 books. All right, so we have 2 verbs that we see in the Tanakh. One is the pa'al verb, and in the infinitive it would be lirot. It would be like yoreh in the present, yara in the past tense. And so that's one verb. There's another verb that they seem to use both of these verbs a little bit interchangeably with their 2 meanings. So we've got 2 verbs, we've got 2 meanings, but we don't have one meaning one thing and the other meaning the other. So the second verb is a hif'il verb, and it is lehorot, and it's really, really kind of difficult to identify this verb as a hif'il verb, especially when you see it in the present tense, or what I believe biblical scholars call the participle. So we always have troubles when binyan hif'il meets a shoresh that starts with a yod. And that's what's going on here. If you think of another verb, another hif'il verb, like lehargish, which means to feel, the present tense is margish. So you have a mem with an a vowel, and then you have the rest of the shoresh, and then an e vowel at the end. That's also part of what makes a hif'il verb sound like hif'il. But because of this yod, instead of having that ma sound at the beginning, we have a mo sound. It has the mem has a cholam after it, and then the yod just drops out altogether. And so that's why we have more. And then the hey at the end causes problems in all of the binyanim. And what usually happens in the present tense is that yod becomes a hey, especially in the singular. The yod drops out, and in the singular forms it becomes a hey. And so that's why we get more. And so both of these verbs, yoreh and moreh, both get translated to mean he shoots, as in he shoots arrows, or he casts, like he casts a stone into the water, or he teaches. And you might think, well, how does teach apply here? But if you think of the instruction that we are receiving from Hashem, this is not just, let me teach you how to make a cup out of pottery, or let me teach you how to speak Aramaic. It's instruction on how to send ourselves on the right path, the path that Hashem wants us to be on. And so, of course, that meaning has widened, and now, of course, it means, it relates to teaching of all kinds of subjects. But for the most part, in the Tanakh, it had to do with Hashem's guidance and teaching and sending us on a correct path, like we would do, like we're the arrow. We are the arrow in this situation. All right, so yore and more, they're both verbs, right? Meaning either to shoot an arrow or to cast a stone or to teach somebody, to instruct them. So, or both of them, those participle forms can also be used as the agent of the verb. So it can be a shooter, or it's usually translated as an archer in the Tanakh, or as a teacher or a leader or a guide. So in the Tanakh we have yore and more, both getting translated as archer or teacher. In modern times, yore with the yod means to shoot. And it's nowadays usually shooting bullets. And more with the mem, the hifil verb, is the one that actually means to teach or to lead or to guide or to instruct. And yore can be a shooter, and more is a teacher. So the one with the yod at the beginning is now, in modern times, it's all about shooting, and the one with the mem at the beginning is all about instructing. So yore, I unfortunately do hear it a lot in the verb form and in the noun form. But more, Pealim.com and the Academia both have it as a verb still in modern Hebrew. I don't hear it very often. Usually there's another verb, lelamed, which means to teach. That's the one I hear the most when people are talking about teaching somebody something. But more as a noun is a very, very common word to mean teacher. So more, mora if she's female, and so all of these words are still used quite a bit in modern times. Now, one more meaning of these words yore and more back in biblical times are as the early rains that happen right around this time of year in the fall. And so in biblical times you see it translated as early rains, and you see the source word, the Hebrew word, can be either yore or more. But in modern times they always refer to these first rains as yore. And of course, this is something that only happens in Israel. The first rains of the year, or the first rains of the season, anywhere else around the world, they're not going to refer to it this way. And I did go looking to see what the relationship was. And, there's a lot of theories. I'm sure nobody really knows for sure. Of course, everything is, whenever you're trying to reconstruct the past, it's always a bit theoretical. But one theory was that, the first rains, they come down like arrows, right? Like liquid arrows from the heavens. And so maybe that's how it got that name. Another one was saying that, no, it's the other side of the equation, the teaching side, that these first rains were instructing the ancient Israelites that winter was on its way, and so whatever they needed to do to prepare for the winter, these rains were letting you know now is the time. So that's it for this shoresh in the Tanakh. there were quite a few words. They just were all the same words. They don't have a wide variety of words from the Tanakh. Modern Hebrew does have a couple more words. One of them is yeri, which just means a shooting. And there's a nif'al passive verb of the pa'al lirot, which is lehiyarot, and that means to be shot. All right, and then I found one interesting phrase in the Academia's website, Yara Even Pina, which literally means he cast a cornerstone. So in my video on Resh Aleph Shin, I mentioned a word Rosh Pina, which means which meant a cornerstone, which was the first stone of a building, and all of the other, it kind of defines the direction that the building is going to be standing, and then everything else is measured off of that. And that was Rosh Pina, but another word for that same concept is Even Pina. And so if you cast the cornerstone, what you're doing is you are laying a foundation. And so that's what it means. It's more, it doesn't have to literally be the cornerstone of a building, right? If you're laying the foundation for some new concept or some new organization or whatever it is that you might lay foundations for, you can say Yara Even Pina. So that's it. Simchat Torah marks the end of like a month of just one holiday after another, and it can kind of cause havoc in the Jewish world, because everything closes down on all of these holidays, and you really can struggle to get anything done in the entire month of September, September, October. But Simchat Torah is basically the end of it, and so we are getting back to our normal lives. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments. Hit like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you want to see more. Lehitraot b'pa'am ha'ba'ah. See you next time.